Hi, welcome to Eric's Movie Corner. I'm Eric, and today I'm going to be talking about the 1982 action classic First Blood, starring Sylvester Stallone, Brian Dennehy, and Richard Crenna. First Blood, you may have seen my short on this before I recorded this. The title of the movie is First Blood. A lot of people think it is Rambo First Blood because a lot of the cover art for the movie says Rambo at the top and then it has First Blood down at the bottom. This was done after the movie was a success because people then knew the name Rambo and it was a marketing point. But before that, people didn't know the name Rambo, and so it was just First Blood. Many people also don't realize that this is based on a novel by David Morrell of the same title, First Blood. If you haven't read the book, you should pick up a copy and check it out. There are several differences between the movie and the book that are kind of interesting to note if you take the time to read the book. For instance, it is much more clearly delineated in the movie as Rambo being 100% the good guy and the sheriff being 100% the bad guy. This is much less clear in the book. There's a lot more shades of gray. The sheriff has a lot more humanity to him in the book. In the book, he is a Korean War veteran, so he relates to Rambo to a certain extent and has some sympathy for him, and all that is completely left out of the movie. Also, in the movie, Rambo is made to be much more of a noble soldier than in the book. In particular, there's an encounter he has with somebody in the woods that goes completely differently in the book than it does in the movie. And if it went the same way that it did in the book, you might have less sympathy for the character of John Rambo. Richard Crenna plays the role of Colonel Troutman, who was the officer that trained Rambo, and his character is also significantly different in the book than it is in the movie. If you haven't seen this movie, you should really go check it out if you're into action films. This is one of the classics. Interestingly enough, when this script was first brought to him, Sylvester Stallone did not want to do this movie. He spent months saying no to the people trying to get him to do this movie because he thought it would be a horrible flop and ruin his career. He had just been coming off the success of the Rocky movies and really didn't want to do anything to stop that momentum. But eventually they came back with a rewrite and he was like, all right, this is turning into something I can work with. And they offered him enough money that he got on board. If you are willing to spend the money to buy a copy of First Blood, whether it be digital or on disc, I would highly recommend getting one with the commentary track from Sylvester Stallone on it. I've listened to a bunch of commentary tracks over the years, and they are hit and miss as far as how interesting they are. And I can say that Sylvester Stallone's commentary on this movie is really pretty interesting. I'll be getting into some of the things he said, but not all of them. I'll leave some mystery for you to go find out on your own. He's got some things to say about this movie that make it pretty interesting to check out. A lot of people associate the Rambo movies with a whole bunch of explosions. Now, don't get me wrong, you'll get your fair share of explosions in First Blood, but it is a much deeper movie than people seem to recall. This movie actually has something to say about the way soldiers are treated, particularly from the Vietnam War, the way they were treated poorly when they came back, how they're trained to kill, and they go kill, 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 and then somebody canceled the war, and they came back, and they have a real hard time integrating back into society, because they don't know how to act in regular civilian life because they're used to being a soldier, which is a completely different bag of tricks. So it's kind of interesting to note that as you're watching the movie. All right, I'm going to get into some spoiler territory now. So if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. It's a good one. Totally worth your time. But now I'm going to go through some clips and kind of point out some interesting moments from this movie. The first one I'm going to play for you here. This is when Rambo first shows up in town and the sheriff doesn't like what he sees. So he does Rambo a quote-unquote favor by picking him up and giving him a ride through town so he can continue walking the other direction and not actually stop there.
There's a diner about 30 miles up the highway.
Is there any law against me getting something here?
Yeah, me. are you pushing me? What did you say? So why are you pushing me? I haven't done anything to you. First of all, you don't ask the questions around here. I do. You understand? Secondly,
you can see they're setting up the tension between these two immediately.
Drifters. First thing you know, we got a whole bunch of guys like you in this town. That's why.
So yeah, the sheriff does not like Rambo from the first time he sets eyes on him. Does not have a high opinion on him. Judges him immediately by his appearance and his preconceived notions of veterans. So what happens at this point is that he drops Rambo off outside of town, and Rambo doesn't want to walk 37 miles up the highway to get something to eat, so he turns around to go back to town to eat, and the sheriff picks him up and arrests him for vagrancy. And while they're processing him at the police station, they hose him down with a fire hose, and then they go to shave him, and two of the officers are restraining him while the third one is trying to shave him with a straight razor. And he has some flashbacks to when he was a prisoner of war and uses his training as a Green Beret to get away from the police officers and escape. So he's out escaping from these, and this little clip right here is where he finds a little piece of canvas that he picks up and ties around his waist with a wire to have some cover. And one of the things Sylvester Stallone talks about in his commentary is that that little piece of canvas was real. He just found it on the ground out there on the site. And it was really the only thing that was keeping him warm. And they only had one of them. So that piece of canvas was like the holy grail on set. Nobody was allowed to mess with it. They had to keep track of it at all times, because if they had lost that piece of canvas, they were completely hosed for the rest of the production. And according to Sylvester Stallone, he still has that piece of canvas to this day. So as the police continue to pursue Rambo through the woods, and they get a helicopter out there, and this guy hanging out of the helicopter with the gun is actually not supposed to be shooting at Rambo, but he's a big, manly, macho man and must shoot. So he's trying to shoot Rambo while he's hanging off this cliff. And if you see this fall right here, this is a stuntman right here. This is also a stuntman right here. And that's a stuntman, but this is actually Sylvester Stallone doing this fall through the tree here, and he actually broke his rib doing it. I believe right there when he lets out that scream is because he broke a rib. So he did that last part of the stunt on his own because he thought it would be much more convincing if it was actually him. And I think he's right. Once he manages to get away from the helicopter, he realizes he's been pretty seriously cut on his way down the tree and goes to sew himself up here. So there's some pretty gnarly special effects here with his cut on his arm. And according to Sylvester Stallone, he played a prank on the local ER and went in there with this makeup on with a little device in his armpit that he can squeeze to make it bleed. And he went in there with it partially stitched up like you see right here, and told the ER people that he had fallen up against an axe and tried sewing himself up, but it got all slippery because of the blood, and it kind of hurt, and then he asked for some Tylenol. So the people at the ER all looked at each other kind of weird, and he gave him some Tylenol, and he took the Tylenol and walked out the door. So there's this, for a while, there was this myth that Sylvester Stallone was so tough that he just fell on an axe and took some Tylenol for it. Rambo runs off into the woods, and here he has the advantage because he's had all sorts of survival training from the Green Berets. So he's out there, he's setting booby traps, he is stalking the people who are trying to catch him, and the cops are kind of fumbling and bumbling around the woods, not knowing what they're doing. And finally, it ends up with this confrontation between Rambo and the sheriff.
I could have killed them all. I could have killed you. In town, you're the law. Out here, it's me. Don't push it. Don't push it, I'll give you a war you won't believe. Let it go. Let it go.
So right there, I think Rambo was actually being pretty reasonable. he's right. He could have killed all of them, and he didn't. And he just wants to be left alone. So if I were the sheriff, personally, at this point, I would have just cut my losses, gone back to the police station, and clean up the mess that was made from his escape. But this dude in this movie, that's not his style, and he just becomes more determined than ever to pursue Rambo. Eventually, Colonel Troutman shows up and starts to work with the sheriff to try and bring Rambo in. Right here, he's calling Rambo on a radio and trying to get him to come in peacefully.
A lifetime job for me.
There wouldn't be no trouble except for that king shit cop.
All I wanted was something to eat. But the man kept pushing, sir.
Well, you did some pushing on your own, John.
They drew first blood, not me.
And there's the movie title for you. They drew first blood, not me. He is viewing this as a war, him against everybody else. Because at this point, he's completely disconnected from society. He does not fit in. I don't think he even wants to fit in. And the sheriff's coming after him. And now he's back in war mode, which is what he knows. It's what he's comfortable with. So that's where he's going. He's essentially declared war on the town. So eventually, he steals an army truck that has some weaponry on it and drives into town and decides that he's just taking this to the next level and he's going to start taking out the entire town. And this is one thing that I miss about the 80s right here, is that back in the day, if you wanted to blow up a gas station on screen, you had to blow up a gas station. So right here, they blow up a gas station. You can see it shaking right here. That's because the cameras were on sticks, unattended as the explosions went off, because none of the cameramen wanted to be near all of these explosions. And quite frankly, I can't blame them. But man, those are some great explosions. Ah, the 80s. So those are some clips for you from First Blood. I'm not going to show you the final scene, because that would be a little bit of a spoiler, and it's worth just watching the movie to see it in context with the rest of the film. It's really, I find, quite touching. Some people make fun of Sylvester Stallone because he's so upset during this scene that you can have a hard time understanding what he's saying. I don't have trouble understanding what he's saying. What he's saying is pretty sad and makes you feel for him. That's the other thing that's way different between the movie and the book, is that the book has a completely different ending. I'll just note there are a bunch of Rambo movie sequels and there aren't any more Rambo books. So yeah, do the math. So I hope you enjoyed stopping by, listening to me talk about Rambo. If you did, please give me a like below and hit the subscribe button so you can get everything else I post, and hit the reminder button so that you can get immediately notified when the post goes up. Thanks for stopping by Eric's Movie Corner. I'll talk to you next time.